And now a few words from Ramsey Clark, former Attorney General of the United States of America in the LBJ administration. He also worked in the Kennedy and the Carter administration. He's going to tell you a little bit about the growing police state and who controls it, the power behind the scenes. Again, Austin American statesman, Kirk Watson, where are you when former attorney generals have the will to talk about the CFR and the Trilateral Commission and the police state? Is he a kook too? Well, let's go ahead and see what he has to say.
Every individual has an obligation to be involved in this struggle if you want to live free and want your children who come after to live free. You can't be a bystander. And right now we really risk this spread of militarization throughout the world that is endangering the poor everywhere. It's the desire to control by force. There's so many people and so much poverty, and there's so much technology that can destroy people that is being employed against people everywhere. The poor here, the poor nations abroad, got to cut back on all hardware for police. Police ought to serve the people, not be a force. It shouldn't be a paramilitary concept. It ought to be a social service concept that deals sensitively with the people. We have to deal with the basic problems. While we have poverty, we're going to have the problems that poverty creates. Poverty is the mother of crime. Plato told us that 2,500 years ago, and it was pretty obvious then. It's pretty obvious now.
But the thing that I don't think that the American public realizes is that this military training is going on. What are some things that we can do to get this reversed, hopefully?
Well, I think we have to resist at every level. If you don't work at the national level, you can't expect the local level. I mean, after all, we're providing a lot of federal funds for the local level, and they love it.
And that brings control.
It brings control. It brings technology. It brings things they don't need, you know.
Infrared.
Who needed tanks out here? Yeah, you've got everything that billions and billions of dollars of research and development to provide the military are now being
It's going into civilian control. Have you seen Waco Rules of Engagement?
Sure.
It's horrifying, isn't it?
It's horrifying. The whole story is even more horrifying.
Sir, I didn't actually see this last year, but I heard about it reported in some of the alternative press. Is it true that last year you spoke about how the Trilateral Commission is running the country?
Well, I've criticized the Trilateral Commission for many years, but I don't really think the Trilateral Commission is running the country. I think
CFR?
I think the same people are
control it.
The same people that run the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the Trilateral.
Those are just front groups.
Sure. I mean, they're just
meeting houses.
They're organizations through which they implement their power, and it's an international group that maintains power through the multinational corporations and the media and all the rest.
Yes, sir. And wouldn't you say that now what you have is corporate socialism for them and slavery for us?
Well, you've got corporate wealth for them. They don't.
It's called stealing.
It could be called stealing, although it's stealing on such a grand scale that you'd have to call it grand larceny, I think.
I've done interviews at protests and things, and the police walk up and say, stay behind the demarcation line, and you'll hear them talking, watch the civilians. They're using military terminology. Is this dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous. A paramilitary concept of police is a police state, you know, and our Constitution was created to prevent a police state. Yet our police expenditures, our creation of the fear of crime and the belief that you can solve crime by more prisons, by the death penalty, and by beating people in the head is crazy. It's just war with our own society. And you see it come to a head at a peaceful church outside of Waco, Texas, Mount Carmel.
Now let's hear from former Delta Force commander and still a consultant for the Pentagon, Steve Barry, on the Carl Wigglesworth show in San Antonio. The same day I was down there talking to the police chief. Now, I do apologize for some of the sound quality. This was taped by an associate of mine here in Austin, Texas. It does have some interference and things because it is a San Antonio station, but bear with it, it's short.
Delta's mission purview, their mission profile, is so point target specific that within the facility that was constructed for them, they could reconstruct the layout of the target that they need to attack within that facility. Why then do they need to attack cold targets in U.S. cities?
And why? Give me an answer.
because they're preparing for domestic counterterrorism operations, but the domestic counterterrorism operations they're preparing for are not against foreign terrorists on U.S. soil. They're against U.S. citizens who are going to resist the increasing socialization of America.
Our guest, Stephen Barry. We've been arguing this back and forth, Stephen Barry. We have had many people who say, what are you talking about? Let Delta Force come on in. There's nothing wrong with them using abandoned buildings and being in the streets of San Antonio with their helicopters and their troops. In fact, are you unpatriotic as an American if you don't allow them to train here in our city streets? And then the other side saying things that, like I've been saying, that this makes no sense whatsoever. It's an endangerment, and our mayor and our police chief have gone along those same lines. And is there more to it than that, Stephen Barry?
Well, what we're looking at is an incestuous relationship between the active duty military and national law enforcement, both at the local, state, and federal level.
Barry, U.S. Army retired. He was in Special Forces. You're not convinced, and what do you think might else be going on?
Well, almost immediately following Waco, in the spring and early summer of 1993, the operators at the Combat Applications Group were given a survey to elicit their responses for operating under control of the United Nations. Immediately following that survey, between September and about May or June of 1995, a lot of the old operators, the people who first formed Delta back in 1978, 1977, 1978, began leaving Delta and coming into Special Forces to run a team or work on a staff for a year or maybe 2 years and then retire. So in essence, what they were doing is they were chasing out the old operators who knew what their mission profile was and was supposed to be, and bringing in new people who really didn't care whether that mission profile was being met or expanded upon.
So basically, you've got a bunch of young punks that don't care about the Constitution, that were raised in what David Rockefeller called the government training centers, or what he called the public schools, helpless people yielding themselves to our molding hands. These guys are now in Delta Force. And there's the statesman from May 10th, Metro and State, terrorism fear spurs training. They don't talk about what happened in San Antonio or in other cities. Oh, no, they talk about how wonderful it is and how they're going to be training here, and doesn't tell you much more. It just says that you'll stay real safe from terrorism and biological and chemical attack. Well, let's take a look at some declassified MK-Ultra documents which were republished in Popular Mechanics, and watered down, by the way, where they admit that in 1950 and 1966 they used chemical and biologicals on us. So the only chemical and biological attacks in U.S. history were done by our federal government. So I guess these teams are there to protect us from our own government. So our government is protecting us from the government. That's good. But in this Statesman article, again from May 10th, 1998, they wonderfully, just a couple days after the event in San Antonio that I'm sure they're aware of, that they don't want to tell the citizens of Austin about, in San Antonio, where the mayor and the police chief stood up against it. Of course, you saw that interview earlier. That's for Statesman writers to hear that. I know some of you trash are watching. I'm sorry, just traitors like you. I'll quit being emotional. You sit here and you look at this, and they tell you that chemical and biological attack is imminent, that the government says that. And it's not a question of will it happen, but when will it happen? So they're preparing us, and some of the news stations go around and tell us that all this is fixing to happen and the sky is falling and where will the next terrorist attack will be. They're entering it into our psychology. And then once you have the information about Oklahoma City, and it's clear, I've gone over that 1,000 times, that they were engaged in that. So again, who has the track record? Who is already an offender? The federal government and the giant secret government that's grown up around it. So thanks a lot, Statesman. Oh, by the way, in that article it says that in June they're going to set the date for sometime after June for this training to go on here in town. They don't say what secret federal teams it'll be. They just say some secret federal teams. So, but they tell you how wonderful it is and how it's going to keep you safe out there. With the guise of keeping us safe from terrorism, $4.6 billion, $4,600,000,000 to set up these systems. This is the final conflagration. And FEMA, only 7% of its money's for floods. Now, there's Popular Mechanics, April 1998 issue. They take declassified documents and tell you that it's all part of the past, all part of the Cold War. And see, this rationalizing is only making it worse and worse. Excuses for more and more powers. And as we stand up the IRS, more and more trouble. 1950, San Francisco, the Navy released a deadly biological weapon that resulted in deaths. That remains classified. And in 1966, right there at the bottom of your page, yes, sir, they released a biological weapon in the New York subway, and deaths did result, but that remains classified. That is America, ladies and gentlemen, and they're having to bring this information forward now, many years after, because people are shining the spotlight of truth on it. I hope this presentation has woke you up to what's happening. You better get motivated and get out of your shell. America is under siege. And if you didn't see the first of the program, yes, this week, the Express News in San Antonio, their main paper, told you point blank, black helicopters and the whole shebang and the police chief and the whole deal. It's true, and they stood up to it. This is police state, and our one hope is to get local law enforcement on our side and people in the military on our side and educate them about this threat. I know it's hard for a lot of Americans who have been sucked in by the con man you see on your screen. President Clinton is just the latest in a long line of transnational criminals. If they can't buy off a president, they'll get rid of the president. We saw this with Kennedy and before him with Lincoln and their attempted assassination of 7 times Andrew Jackson, who wouldn't give them central banks. Well, since 1913, they've had the system in the bag. Roosevelt in 33 was their shoe-in, and everything's just been accelerating. We are in deep trouble. And people out there, you can't doubt that these plans have been accelerating under Bill Clinton, simply because he's the front man in there at the time when the New World Order, known as globalism, the future, is making its move. And yes, their future is the future if we don't stand up against it. But the future is not always good. I want a good future, one where the IRS can't bend you over a barrel at their leisure, a place where you can raise your children and have some control over your destiny. We need to impeach President Clinton, not because that'll solve our problems, no, but to show the establishment that we will not put up with this garbage. They have been defending him to the hilt, letting him take flack for petty issues such as sexual problems, but not for the transfer of nuclear weapons technology to China, not for handing over the Panama Canal to China, the Long Beach Naval Base to China, and our entire banking system, even more so, into Europe's hands. He is a servant of the European Union. We need to know our enemy. President Clinton is an enemy of the American people. America has not betrayed us. Traitors have betrayed us. And we, being ignorant cowards that believe the mainstream media and are conned by its lies. We're here on East 7th Street at the Austin, Texas Central Police Department, trying to find out about the Delta Force and what's really going on. We're going to attempt to talk to the police chief and others, and we'll see if they are as open about the Delta Force as the police chief and the mayor were in San Antonio. Not to mention former Delta Force commanders. You see, they're practicing rounding up you and your family, and it's key that we keep local law enforcement on our side. This is a political battle that we can win, and we intend to win it. So let's go do some interviews and talk to some people about the growing police state here in America, the federal police state. We support local law enforcement. Right. Here you go. Chief Nee, Alex Jones from KG. I got a very interesting interview with the police chief, Al A. Philippus in San Antonio. Do you know him?
Yes, I do. David said
I got an interview with him.
Let me tell you something. This is an open house.
I understand.
If you want to come talk to me about business, give me a call, and I'll arrange to have you, make some time for you to come on up.
I just wanted to ask you about the Delta Force coming to town and their dangerous past and how the police chief and mayor of San Antonio asked them to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Who's the actual camera guy? They continually tried to divert me away from the police chief, even though I was polite and congenial. And the police chief continued to say that he would give me an audience with His Excellency at some later date. The only problem is we've requested interviews about 30 times by telephone and twice by writing.
And now, because of the Delta Force coming to town in late June, according to the May 10th Statesman, well, they tell you anti-terror teams, we felt that it was vital to speak to him. We'll try to get a face-to-face interview in his office sometime in the next couple of weeks. Today is May 20th. But as you see, the SWAT officer there came up to me and said, "Hey, who's the cameraman?" And starts saying, "What's his name? Isn't it Hanson?" So obviously they've been investigating us. They ought to try to go out and investigate some of the drug runners or people, but I guess we're the people that need to be investigated. Don't worry, this isn't going to deter us.
This is an open house.
I understand.
If you want to come talk to me about business, give me a call, and I'll arrange to have you, make some time for you to come on up.
I just wanted to ask you about the Delta Force coming to town and their dangerous past and how the police chief and mayor of San Antonio asked them to leave.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Who's the actual camera guy for you guys? Is his brother a cop or not?
Yeah.
We were just trying to figure out what his name was.
Hello, John. Good to see how you...
Chief, I know you're busy, but we need to get this out in the open about the Delta Force because I've called it.
I told you once. I said that if you want to talk to me, you can make an appointment, and I'll come in and
You will meet with me?
Sure.
On camera about this? Because it's important.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Chief Nee, I'm leaving, but I'm going to call you tomorrow, sir.
That's fine.
And I'm here to protect and defend the Constitution.
Okay.
And that's not I know that's an old, worn-out idea.
Okay. We'll talk to you later.
Great. Now, you said you would meet with me, sir. Appreciate it. Let's get out of here. Come on. Clinton has signed another executive order allowing even more transfer of Cold War technology to local police departments. We're here trying to find out about the Delta Force who's coming to town. Here we have the kids learning about how fun the armored personnel carriers are. Of course, you know, they just built the $2,031,000 helicopter base that they're fixing to start construction on. A lot of fun things going on. Federal government's making sure that the local governments have all they need to combat troublemakers right here in Austin, Texas. What type of vehicle is this?
It's called APC, Armored Personnel Carrier.
Armored personnel carrier.
Donated from the military, donate that, Jeff?
Yeah, yeah, all those free goodies. There's a lot more coming, don't worry.
I wish.
Let me ask you a question. What's this little mount for it up here? Up there where you can pop the hatch, the turret there?
Military had it before, and that would be a turret with a machine gun. They used to have a machine gun mounted up there. You can see the hardware they had up. Well, we'll go up. Sometimes you'll have an officer up there with a handgun providing cover. Anyways.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you'll use this to yank burglar bars off, maybe. Somebody got burglar bars and we're serving a warrant. Drive it up in the yard, throw a chain
Have
over.
you ever used this before to jerk burglar bars and stuff?
They use it pretty regular. Anytime you have a house with burglar bars, it's just nice and heavy. And if someone shoots out the door at you, you're a little bit better covered than a pickup truck.
Makes sense. Did you hear about the Delta Force that's coming to town next month?
No, I have not.
Yeah, I've got the actual interview with L.A. Philippus, the police chief of San Antonio. He threw them out because they engaged in bribery, lies, dishonesty. They have a dangerous track record. In New Orleans, they caused $100,000 worth of damage to a building.
What was the Delta Force doing in New Orleans?
They're training, according to Stephen Barry, former Delta Force commander, to round up citizens. He got out in '95 when they asked him to go under UN control. Of course, I've got all that on tape. But
Sorry, hold on.
that's fine.
Where's the what?
So back to what we were talking about. You haven't heard about the Delta Force Army Special Operations coming to town? You kind of seemed shocked when I told you about that. That's kind of strange, isn't it?
Well, you're also talking to a guy who's been on a SWAT team 4 months. And I was out of town. My mother passed away a few months ago of cancer, so I wasn't even in town for the first 2 months I was on the team.
What do you think about the police chief of San Antonio saying that his main concern is the safety of the public, period, and about Delta Force using live ammunition in the streets?
I wouldn't know what to say because I don't know anything about it.
Gotcha. We need to get people aware of this.
That'd be good. If I knew what you're talking about, I'd probably have a comment, but since I have no idea what the situation
Well,
is.
they're coming in late June to confer with city leaders and people about this. And
Well, hopefully, talk to our chief and whatever they got to do.
well, I hope you'll protect and defend the Constitution from enemies foreign and domestic.
That's my job. Uphold the laws of the state of Texas.
Hey, I like that. Thanks a lot, buddy.
That one's simpler. Works good. You got.
There's your HK 9mm.
Yep. you got someone coming out with a knife or baseball bat or something, and they're not complying, they're not throwing it down, you know, he's not a threat to you if you're standing away.
Are these the guns y'all are issued, or y'all choose HK?
That was issued to us. I'm sure they did an evaluation of them before they got them.
Good old Heckler and Koch. You know, Clinton's trying to ban, and has banned most importations of your German weapons.
Most of the overseas stuff, I think, they got all different kinds of bans going now.
Yeah, they do.
It works fine.
Is this your Kevlar helmet?
Yep.
Pretty effective?
Yeah.
Can we look at it?
Sure.
Boy, it almost looks like a German helmet.
I think it's. I think they're actually military surplus, so it's spray paint them black. I know the old German ones used to fall down farther in the back.
Oh, I know.
Protect from shrapnel and stuff in the back of your neck. You know.
Where's your? Oh, is this the
Balaclava?
Balaclava.
Yeah, that's the one I seen the other day.
Balaclava goes your head. It's a.
So this is. Why are they called Balaclava?
It's a language that's not English, as far as I know. It means something. I don't know if it's from Latin or whatever.
Maybe the Inquisitors wore these.
I don't know.
Is part of wearing these intimidation?
As far as I know, the biggest thing is because you can't watch them is because they're fire retardant. If you get in fire or whatever, it's the only protection you have on exposed skin.
Plus you're in, because y'all go to a lot of fires?
No, but, you know, anytime you go into a house, you know, who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I trust our local law enforcement, but it just seems when the FBI and with the HRT, the hostage rescue team, and goes into things, you always seem to have a fire. You familiar with what happened to Vicki Weaver in Ruby Ridge? Lon Horiuchi, FBI sniper?
I remember hearing Ruby Ridge on the news, but I tell you the truth, I don't follow news.
Yeah, I hear you. You won't put this on for us, will you?
If it smells, don't blame me, because like I said, they don't wash them because of fire retardant material.
No, I mean, whose is this?
It's not mine. I ain't putting it on.
They issue these to you?
Yeah, standard. Gas.
This is a gas grenade. This isn't CS. They banned that, right?
Yeah, that's
This isn't what they banned in '68, but they used it at Waco.
That's OC. That's
OC?
pepper gas.
Yeah. Interesting.
These are 40 millimeter. These are 37.
That's interesting. Are you guys familiar with posse comitatus?
Heard of it.
Well, I know the Constitution is pretty much ignored nowadays by people up in New York and Washington. Well, I think y'all will be unusually surprised when Delta Force comes to town next month and plans training for November. But again, give your friends, if you got any friends in San Antonio, give the police department a call. They attempted to bribe the police chief. I have him on beta cam, that's our little video cam. And I have the mayor, Howard Peake, quoted. You got to find out about it, man. It's incredible. They shoot up businesses with people in them where no criminals are, just on accident. Everywhere they go, they do it. They caused $100,000 damage to a building in New Orleans. In Charlotte, North Carolina, about a 50 helicopter assault came in. The mayor was very angry because he'd agreed to them doing it, but then caused a panic. I think they're getting people used to that type of behavior.
Were you going to do a special on that in your show, showing you the film?
I've shown it 4 times in the last 2 weeks, yeah. Well, here we have our local police training, which is fine, as long as they don't train with the military and secret programs. And I just talked to the police chief in San Antonio about a week ago, Al A. Philippus, and he threw the Delta Force out because they attempted to bribe public officials. Actually, he said they did bribe some officials, and they have a dangerous track record of blowing things up in other cities, in a few other cities. Are you familiar that they're coming to town next month?
I don't know what you're talking about.
So you haven't gotten any word of this?
No.
They are coming to town next month, sir, under the guise of anti-terrorism training. And the police chief said that they have a dangerous track record in San Antonio, and that's why the mayor, Howard Peake, asked them to cease training in San Antonio.
I don't know what you're talking about.
In New Orleans, they use live ammo.
Let's watch the demonstration here. This is for the public. I'll be glad to talk to you later.
For the public? Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Did Mick come down already?
So you're not familiar with Army Special Operations coming to
Can I
town?
see your identification?
Sure. Mike, give
Do you
him
have your press card?
Sure.
Do you have your press credentials?
Well, I'm just asking a police officer a question.
Officially, I'm Sergeant Carey. I
Yes,
have
sir.
no comment about what you're talking about. No
Really?
comment whatsoever.
Are you not allowed to talk about it?
I have no comment.
No comment about the Delta Force?
That's correct.
And no comment
I
about the
don't know,
police
I
chief?
don't know anything about the
Why don't
Delta
you call
Force.
Delta Force if you have a question about them? We're APD SWAT.
They supposedly don't even exist, and the mayor of San Antonio, Howard Peak, threw them out. I also have an interview
They
face-to-face
exist in the movies.
with Al A. Philippus. No, sir. Sir, it's not a joke.
I know, but they do exist in the movies.
They caused
That's all I
over
know.
$100,000 of property damage in major cities. In Miami, they shot into an all-night restaurant full of people, and they're coming here next month. It was in the Austin American-Statesman.
Well, that's
Believe-
the Austin Statesman.
Ask them about it. I don't
Well,
know where they get their information.
They just say Army Special Operations, and they say it's going to be working with y'all.
This
See,
is
somebody
the
stepped on the ropes. See, that's what my job is to watch.
This is the lieutenant at SWAT, and like he'll tell you that there's no, we don't know anything about what you're talking about.
I was just concerned with posse comitatus like the police chief of San Antonio is. That's what he said on tape.
You might want to go to San Antonio and talk.
I already did.
Okay.
Already did.
Like, there's your story.
Well, we got that 2 weeks ago.
So it's over.
It was on national radio about a week ago, yes. I had the story. I don't know. Just big news because they are coming here. And
Who do we check with to find out about
How do we
that?
find out
don't
about
know.
that? You obviously know.
the May 10th Metro and State of the Statesman says that Army Special Operations and $4.6 billion is being doled out. And listen, I'm not antagonistic to police officers. I just see this as a serious crisis of
Well, why don't?
the Constitution.
I mean, that's right, but this is a fun night. We're supposed to be out here making friends with the public.
I am. Well,
Here's a lieutenant over the gang unit. over the SWAT team. Like, you can call him and talk to him. Like,
Yeah, well, let's set up an
whatever.
appointment.
Yeah,
I mean, but we have no comment on what you're talking about, sir.
gotcha.
I mean,
What's your name again?
we have a PIO office.
Alex Jones.
Scott Carey, Sergeant Scott Carey.
Well, thanks a lot, Sergeant. Stephen Barry, former Delta Force commander, says that they're practicing rounding up people. I have an interview.
We don't know what.
I had the police chief, I had the mayor of San Antonio,
Okay, great, but I don't even know who the mayor of San Antonio is.
Howard Peak.
Okay, mayor of Austin's Kirk Watson. That's who I care about.
That's who I'm worried about, because if he lets them come in here and train
Taking out the
Sheriff
time. A
Eastman,
lot of public officials and public servants are afraid to even talk to the public or the press about things like this. When did you first become aware that Delta Force, the most elite training force in America, is what the Pentagon says, wanted to train with actual live fire or blanks here in San Antonio? Is that true?
Yes, that's correct. That actually started probably, I want to say, back in February when they first approached us, maybe even earlier than that, about doing some operations, in the San Antonio area.
And we'll get into this more later, and I appreciate you taking the time again. Well, basically, you're the person that knows about it. What were your major reservations in asking the mayor to tell them that y'all didn't want them to train here and to cease training here?
Well, a lot of things happened. First of all, the organization came into the city and never really approached the city as a whole. We've gotten together with the mayor and said we need to speak to all these different departments and request some assistance. Various groups and individuals came into the city and approached different people at different levels. The police department was contacted, the city manager's office was contacted about using city facilities, various business owners were contacted through the economic development department, the fire department was contacted by different individuals, and so there was never any coordinated approach to the city of San Antonio. When we found out of that, we had some reservations, but we were willing at least to listen. But then we started finding out that discussions were happening at other different levels, and there was no communication, no coordination between that. We also found out that leases had been negotiated with private business people throughout the city to utilize their vacant buildings without any coordination with the police department, because we were originally told there were probably going to be a couple of locations, and later on we find out that there's 12 locations. And yet we were never brought into this at the beginning.
Last Saturday, the Austin American Statesman did an article about how they're practicing taking over police departments in Chicago. In fact, I've got a copy of that. I can give you a copy of that after the interview. I should have brought it up from my car. I just remembered. That's one thing that some cities I've heard have had reservations about. They call it touring the police department, but they actually practice dynamic entry and other things at the police departments. I heard that they were planning to do this in Houston, that they've already done some training along with the Marines and other forces of the military. Have you ever heard of anything like this before?
No, I have not. They did offer to allow our SWAT teams to do training with them in these particular exercises, but, you know, our missions are different. Theirs deals specifically with international type situations. Our deals with local situations, and if an incident were to occur in this country, it would be local law enforcement, the FBI, and others that would deal with that.
Whereas the Delta Forces purely kill the terrorists.
Whatever it is. I'm not so sure what it is, but it's at an international level, and so our missions, our tactics are somewhat different. And I'm very proud of the SWAT team that we have. I think we have one of the best in the country. We do a lot of training for other agencies, and I think that we have the skills and the expertise to deal with those situations.
Why did the mayor, and I heard this quoted on KTSA, San Antonio 550 station 2 days ago, I heard it quoted that the mayor said that he didn't appreciate the dishonesty of the Delta Force. I was curious. We called the mayor's office, and they, Jackie O'Donnell, I believe is her name, she told us that you were the mayor's spokesman on this. Can you tell us exactly why the mayor would use such strong language and call them dishonest?
Well, I think that there were various approaches. For example, when I originally said no several weeks ago, matter of fact, a couple of months ago, but no was never no. And then no was never no. End of runs were done around to various community leaders. I had someone...
Excuse me, sir, you're saying that they ignored the police chief, and under our Constitution, you're the same as the sheriff, and you run the city or the county? You're telling me that Delta Force was ignoring your order?
Well, I don't want to say they ignored it, but in a roundabout way, yes, because what they would do, once I said no, they went to various individuals in the community to bring pressure to bear to get me to change my mind. For example, there was a community leader who I have a great deal of respect for, and we have a very good relationship that they went to. I get a call from him, and he says, Chief, there's some people in here that they're in town, and it was part of their role here, didn't say who it was, they need to meet with the mayor and the police chief. Well, of course, this gentleman, I've worked very closely with him on a number of projects. I said, sure, have him give me a call. Now, I'd already said no. Well, then I find out it's the same group. So they identified somebody, apparently, that I know that's very high in the community to make an approach to me and get me to change my mind. Well, then, when we said no, then some elected officials were contacted to bring pressure to bear. And then offers were made to give money, cash money, to elected officials' charities if they could get us to change our minds. I mean, you know, as one of my deputy chiefs said, in some circles that's called bribery.
Well, it is called bribery, but more importantly, it's called manipulation of the constitutional system and the takeover of local police departments. And that $4.6 billion that we just saw in the Statesman that's so wonderful is buying them a lot of control if they can't buy the police chiefs off like they did Elizabeth Watson for that $244,000 a year job at the Justice Department. Let's hear him say that one more time.
To make an approach to me and get me to change my mind. Well, then, when we said no, then some elected officials were contacted to bring pressure to bear. And then offers were made to give money, cash money, to elected officials' charities if they could get us to change our minds. I mean, you know, as one of my deputy chiefs said, in some circles that's called bribery.
Why do you think, and again this is just speculation, I've seen the large bookshelf of policing and criminology over there, and I know it's no small task to be a police chief of a modern city. Why do you think in Chicago, if you're not aware of this, I'll get you a copy of it, that they're practicing taking over police stations and fire stations and bridges? That seems like a military takeover of the city.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't even want to speculate on that. I'm not familiar that those types of things are occurring.
Oh, yes.
Certainly, there was no approach made to us to do those kind of things.
Well, that's good. You talked about a memo from Delta Force?
Yeah, because what happened is various elected officials were being contacted. I have 10 city council members and a mayor, and I just wanted to alert them as to what was happening. That these situations were occurring, that they might be contacted by these individuals, and that that in the best interest of public safety, and that's what I continue to fall back on, we didn't feel that it was in the best interest of the citizens of San Antonio to do that type of thing. All I can say is that, no just never seemed to be no. And even after they told us, we don't need you, we're still going to do our training exercise at other locations in and around the San Antonio area, but we're not doing them here. Next time, I'm still getting contacted by various officials. I mean, they never would take no for an answer.
So they weren't respecting your jurisdiction?
They were not respecting our jurisdiction. I don't think they respected our decision to go into predominantly minority areas of the city where we had vacant warehouses and buildings and try to do those types of exercises at those locations in the middle of the night.
Oh, I'm sorry, middle of the night?
In the middle of the night. Sometime between 9 p.m. and midnight. People become frightened. And we do a lot of our decision-making on experiences that have happened in a lot of other cities. We were very concerned with some things that have happened over there, and we didn't get any real good, clear answers.
So they were being secretive about it?
Very secretive.
And you the city and the mayor and yourself, as the police chief, you kind of felt that it was a little odd that they wouldn't trust y'all. I mean, y'all are the authorities here.
A little odd, and once I made contact with my peers in some of the other major cities, and they shared with me some of their experiences over there, the decision really was very easy. My interest as police chief is the citizens of the city.
Yes, sir.
Period. And I was not about to jeopardize the safety under an exercise of this magnitude under any circumstance.
Well, you can't say it any better than that. This isn't some wild conspiracy theorist. This is Al Philippus, head police chief in San Antonio, Texas. Oh, and the mayor, too, Howard Peak. He says that it's dangerous and that they're dishonest. And, of course, there's former Delta Force commanders like Stephen Barry there to tell you that it's to round up the general population. It's a practice run. Oh, and by the way, according to the May 10th, 1998, Sunday edition of the Austin American Statesman, Metro and State, they're conferring with people here in Austin, and sometime after June of this summer, they plan to have this training here in Austin, Texas. I guess our safety isn't important. Despite the track record in North Carolina, $100,000 damage, and in Miami, a stray bullet from the Delta Force going into a crowded restaurant. What is wrong with Kirk Watson? I hope he shows the same will that Mayor Howard Peak did. But I think Watson's just concerned with making all the big, fat, juicy kickbacks. Fix it, Watson. That's your job. Protect us. Quit sucking off us. And some of you are probably saying, oh, Alex, why are you being so angry about this? Because the statesmen, they know this has happened down in San Antonio. They know this is going on. They're not that ignorant. 4 days after all this comes down, they're writing stories about how wonderful it is and how they're coming to town, these secret teams. I mean, this is dangerous. Helicopters could crash. Anything could happen with these low-flying night missions. And Kirk Watson and these people, they know this is going on. They should throw the Delta Force and all the rest of them out of our city. And I'll get to that later. These are the guys that have a history of spraying our cities with biological weapons. Yes, I'll get to that later, but back to the chief. I'm just documenting every bit of this because I'm tired of it. The propaganda's out of control.
And once I made contact with my peers in some of the other major cities, and they shared with me some of their experiences over there, the decision really was very easy. My interest as police chief is the citizens of the city.
Yes, sir.
Period. And I was not about to jeopardize the safety under an exercise of this magnitude under any circumstance.
What types of training were they wanting to engage in? I mean, again, I heard some reports that they wanted to do live fire with blanks and perhaps actually some incendiary flashbangs and things.
Yeah, I don't know the particulars of that. I know that they wanted to use some explosives for entry into some of these buildings, some of the so-called ceramic bullets, which would be fired into little traps, which were supposed to catch those, which would disintegrate supposedly on contact. But I know that in one city, American city, that one of those bullets got astray and going through a window and down almost into a restaurant. So, things can go wrong.
What city was that?
I believe that it was in Miami.
That's incredible. So, basically right now, as it stands, and until they actually confer with y'all better or change their plans, they're not really welcome to train here in San Antonio?
We are not going to support any of their operations. They may do some things at the various military bases here in San Antonio. That certainly is their jurisdiction, but we will not support any operations in the city limits. So again, the decision really was not that difficult. We have the interest of the citizens of San Antonio. You know, this is a military city. We have a tremendous amount of respect for the military and what they do. But I do not have any respect for the tactics that were used by the advance team coming in here.
You're saying that they were disrespectful?
They were courteous and friendly to us, to our faces, but again, when you make a decision, you try to get information, to go around and try to put influence on you from pressure groups and individuals, either elected or in the community. That's sad.
You're not hitting to borderline Gestapo-esque tactics in politics.
No, I think it was always done very courteously, very professionally, but you know, it still left a bad taste in my mouth.
And I've seen the September 23rd, 1997 Lair News Hour. 60 Minutes a few months later came out with a story about secret military training with local police departments. It seems that Miami has embraced it. It seems that LA has embraced it. And with some of the volatile problems they have, I could, in some instances, understand it. Are you aware, or exactly is the scope, if you can tell us, about the levels of military training between law enforcement here and the military?
We do not train with the military. Our mission and our roles are different. We trained on some of the military bases in order to have access to some of the firing ranges and things like that. But we've got a very good police academy facility out there that we can do a lot of that. We train internally inside of our own city.
I just got this news of this and just came down here in the last day or so. For you, sir, I'm going to get you a packet, and I'm saying this now, so I'll have to do it. I'm going to get you a Lair News Hour. I'm going to get you 60 Minutes, and they tell you it's wonderful. I'm going to get you some of the other information where local... Now, here's the question, and this is my last one. I really appreciate the time. Where local police commanders, the commander of the LA SWAT team, sits right there on camera. He's also a consultant in other cities. And Peter Krasser. And he says, when they ask him about the training with Delta Force and other military forces, he looks at the camera and smiles and says, "I'm sorry, that's classified. I can't talk about that." Now, to me, that's when 6-8 months ago when the red flags went up, when I saw a local law enforcement official saying that something was classified with the military and he couldn't talk about it. And that's why we're here. Again, we just want to thank y'all for showing independence of Texas, of America, of San Antonio, that y'all aren't open to that. What do you think about, and I understand you haven't seen this, but if that is true on Lair News Hour, do you think that that's a red flag or something strange?
I don't think it's necessary. I mean, it's not going to happen on my watch here in San Antonio. It's just totally inappropriate. You know, I was never approached or asked to maintain classified confidentiality on this whole issue. I was in the military. You know, I had a clearance, and I understand that, but nobody's ever asked me to sign anything or say anything of that nature. So,
what would you do if they did? If they said we need the local police to do something classified in conjunction with the feds? I mean, I'm not a total student of the Constitution, but I've read it 10 or 15 times, and I've read the Federalist Papers. That right there looks like police state to me.
We don't do that. If we need to work with the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, or other federal law enforcement agencies that have jurisdiction in this country, then we will certainly do that. But we're not about to engage in those kind of activities with various military groups. Exactly right.
Man, that's great.
I appreciate it.
This guy right here. This is the kind of law enforcement. President Philippus.
No,
right here.
Not hardly.
No, I'm serious. This stuff is running rampant in Austin and Houston, and it's just crazy.
My pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
We're leaving the San Antonio Police Department now, and we found that they were very honest and very upfront with us. And while we were here, we saw the mainstream media. They were here doing a story on unpaid parking tickets, and we're not concerned with local law enforcement standing up for its jurisdiction against the feds and the growing supranational police state.
right here in San Antonio. These people should be commended.
Hello,
Excellent
folks.
job.
This is Mike Hanson here, and we appreciate you watching my new YouTube channel, Hanson Archives. Be sure to subscribe there, hit the subscribe button. And I have a new YouTube channel that we're going to put all the Waco stuff on, Waco Archives. And don't forget our other channel, Mike Hanson Archives. And if you'd like to help out getting all these thousands of tapes uploaded to YouTube, I am offering a special. If you send $25 into this address the lady is going to put up on the screen, we'll send you a signed copy of my book, Bohemia Grove, Cult of Conspiracy. And it was forwarded by Tex Mars. It just recently passed away. So our address there is 901 St. Joseph Street in Gonzales, Texas. So, and if you want to call us for any reason, our number is 830-672-3089. Be sure to keep subscribing, and if you want to look us up on Facebook, it's Mike Hanson, Hanson, from Gonzales, Texas. Alrighty, stay tuned right here on these channels for all these classics. Alex Jones, Jeff Davis, and a bunch of other great Patriots. So we'll see you next time. Keep supporting us. We need the support. It's costing a lot of money. God bless you.
I love Mike Hanson Archives.
Are you ready to run?